Let's do the B patch.
Hey everybody,
Then we'll play.
Riot Mort here, and figured since Reddit asked for it, I would do a quick B-patch rundown. I've got nothing else to do. I'm in a hotel room. I fly home tomorrow. So let's dive right in and talk about some of the updates.
Okay.
This was a planned B-patch. We knew we were going to do it. Since we're heading into the holiday, it's a really long patch.
The 3-week
Think
patch.
of it as 1425, as Roger calls out here.
I think it's a 4-week patch.
One thing to note is starting next year, instead of patch 15.1, we'll be calling it patch TFT 13.3. We're going to be changing our naming convention to match the set number, so it'll be the third patch of the 13 set. So that'll be changing moving forward, so kind of cool. All right, shop odds.
Nice,
as we mentioned, we
helps us
unintentionally shipped a change where it reverted back to a really old version. We're fixing that now that Macau's open, or Macau's done. So the shop odds go back to what they were at launch. So the odds that you were used to are what they are at launch. The biggest change to note here is rolling for 1 cost at 6 is better. Rolling for 3 costs at 6 is worse. And then at 7, rolling for 3 costs are better, and 2 costs is slightly worse. So not too impactful of a change, despite what you might think, but there it is. All
right. So that was a change that actually got shipped in the previous patch, but they didn't actually mean to do that. And if you guys don't know, the reason why that happened is because they built this past patch on a different base. Like, they basically, what goes on is that there's different teams that work on different aspects of things. And so while this patch was technically a huge patch with the 6 cost, and they were using, I think, set 11 or maybe like a patch from set 12 as like the base to work off of and design stuff, and then it just kind of became one of those things that went overlooked. And here's the crazy thing: every player who played PBE also didn't really notice it. Like, it was apparently something that I was playing on the week leading up to Macau, and I didn't notice it, even though I jammed like 50 games on PB and scrimmed Infinite. So it's one of those things. A lot of people thought that it was like a weird, like, Riot's doing like controlled A/B testing to see if like we notice, and then they could like bring up like, oh yeah, we're like manipulating, but it's just not. Like, they overlooked it, which is obviously like they need to like up their QA to make sure that doesn't happen, but also an understandable error. And also, he's right, that doesn't like make the biggest difference, but it does make a difference. If you nerf 10% likelihood for odds for 3 costs on 7, that is a pretty big difference. So good that it's back.
All right, 6 costs. 6 costs, we're generally pretty close to happy with where they are. That being said, I think a lot of people misinterpreted my comment where I said you won't see them every game. What I was trying to say is you, the player, will not get one in every game, which is generally true. That being said, it's still a little higher than we want it. I believe the average right now is like 1.43 per game. So we are trying to bring that down.
Okay.
So what you're going to see is the base odds have been leveled at every level. And then in addition, at level 10, when you get to level 10, that boost has been lowered slightly, so you don't get quite as many at level 10. And then the third thing that's not actually patch note here is that we had a thing behind the scenes where at 7-1, the odds went up pretty significantly to try to like, hey, the game's ending, here, have some 6 costs. That one in particular really didn't work out, so we actually just completely removed that system. So now the odds are what they say they are. So again, generally a little less 6 costs, but you know, there you go.
Okay, so is that a good? I mean, okay, I have to ask a question. Is that a good thing? Because does that make it feel like then it becomes you are the chosen one to hit 6 costs this game, and I'm not? But I guess at the same time, they don't want it to be like everyone has 6 costs, and then all of a sudden it just feels like like basically 6 to 7 people hit the 6 cost, 1 person does not. They're pretty upset about it, and then it becomes about which of the 6 costs did you hit. So like, if there's an imbalance in 6 costs right now in the previous patch, everyone's like, well, this guy hit Victor and I'm stuck with Warwick, and that feels bad. But now it's like the situation where, like, you know, maybe theoretically, if the imbalances exist on 6 costs still, it'd be like they have Victor and I didn't have any 6 costs to even counterplay them. So that's where it becomes kind of dicey. And I think this is where a lot of people bring up issues with, like, I think they're using the word design space, or like the design of 6 costs, and they're using it, and I guess they're like kind of true because it's like the way the systems designs are around it. I think that's definitely where I'm not so sure. I think playing the 6 cost is fun itself. How you get the 6 cost is where I'm really not sure at the moment with the set. That's where I am right now. I actually kind of think the 6 costs are fun to play. Nothing wrong with that. Like they're pretty epic. They cap boards. There's really cool things. I like what they all, each bring to the table, sort of. Except I just played 2 games where I got BS'd by Banish Mage, so it is what it is. Yeah, something to think about.
All right. In the opening encounters, one of the big ones is during Mel's encounter. There's a 1% chance to get 3 Tactician's Crowns, which meant if you had a Pandora's or Reforgers, you could just win the game off a 1% chance, which felt bad.
Yep.
We're going to change that to 2 Tactician's Crowns. So it'll still be like a high roll, but it won't have the easy out of getting that game-winning thing. If you happen to have a 3rd, maybe, but it'll be a lot harder to pull that off. That infinite gold thing is supposed to be hard to do, not just given to you via an encounter.
Yeah, so it was correct to always take Pandoras on Mels. Sometimes, if you're in like a bad position for the 1%, if you knew that there was a Tactician's Crown, you could go for it guaranteed. But sometimes you could just have like Pandoras, and then all of a sudden you transform, have 1/3, and just print infinite gold. I saw people roll up with 3-star 5 costs in stage 5, multiple of them, because they just had infinite gold.
6 Artillerists, still kind of underperforming where we want it to be, considering it requires 2 emblems. So it's going to get 10% more AD. If this still doesn't get it where we want it, we'll probably do something more extreme, like lower the number of autos it takes to get the big rockets, things like that. Okay, Chem Baron. Chem Baron's in a really weird spot right now.
Is
in
it?
tournament play, it's like really risky and hard to play. We saw it Macau a lot. A lot of people would like try it and have it not pay off.
Okay.
We also saw people try it and get it. But on ladder, where the pressure's less, the trait is really, really good, especially if you start with a Chem Baron emblem. That being said, in a B patch, we're not going to radically change how things are working. So what we did was we looked at all the perfected items, and we took the best ones, and we nerfed them to the middle, and we took the worst ones and buffed them up to the middle. So it should be a little more consistent, and the highs won't be as high, and then kind of buff some of the weaker items. So quick run through here. Destabilized Chem Tank was the worst item in the game. It now matches closer to Protector's Vow, which is what it's similar to. Okay. So the base one is 25, the extended one is 50, the perfected one gets much more base HP, and the shield that gets refreshed is a little bit better. So perfected destabilized Chem Tank gets buffed. Flesh Ripper is another one that was kind of underperforming, gets 15% AD. Piltover, Hextech, Armor, and MR. Okay, so Piltover, Armor, this one was too good. We're nerfing the Armor and MR per stack by a bit. Perfected Shimmer Bloom goes down healing and shielding. The shield granted gets lowered. The bonus AP and AS gets lowered, because this was definitely one of the good ones. Unleash Toxins was one of the insane ones. The wave damage is going to go down. That wave is mostly supposed to represent a stun, not tons of damage. So that gets hit really hard, and the stun duration goes down to 1 second. And then Virulent Virus gets a lot less AP. The bonus damage reduction goes down. I don't know if you guys can hear the sirens. It's crazy here. LA is a weird place. The damage reduction goes down.
Abyss Police is coming for more.
HP goes down. So yeah, so again, generally, Chem Baron still be good. It's still the high risk trait. If there's more work to be done, it'll have to be done in a non-B patch. But there you go.
I think they need to tone down Chem Baron in general.
Conqueror gets a slight nudge up, especially to its late game. Right now, we see a lot of people play early game Conqueror to get those rewards, but not so many play late game Conqueror. So each time you open a chest, you'll get a little bit more stats. Now remember, this isn't like 5% flat. This is 5% of the base. So for example, you go from 18, and then you get 18 times 1.03 before, which isn't a lot. Now it'll be 18 times 1.05, which should help it a little. It's not a major change. Sniper. Sniper 2 is fine.
I like
Sniper
the Conquer
4
change.
is really, really bad, so it's going to get buffed by 2.
Yeah.
We didn't want to swing too hard here, so we just went by 2. It might need more than this, honestly, but again, didn't want to swing too hard before the break. And then Sniper 6 just gets +1. It really doesn't need a ton, but yeah.
Remember when we buffed Sniper damage instead of 11 by 1%, and then Ash Wardens, Sniper Wardens became like S tier. So they had to be really careful about this because it's damage per hex, so that scales, and it's all the snipers. So I agree that they took like with like the light swing, because I don't want it to just be like, well, you're playing like Maddie 2, Cog 1, Zeri 1, Twitch 1, and all of a sudden you're just murdering everything. So yeah, that's probably for the best. The Conqueror stack's is nice though. I actually don't think they need it. I actually think Conquerors are in a pretty decent spot. I think it's just harder to play late game if you are if you don't have a +1. So maybe that's what they're trying to do, make it a little bit less dependent on that. But this is gonna make Conquer emblem really good.
For sure. Sorcerer 8 is garbage, and it probably will be. Like I said, we're probably going to do a bigger swing after the holiday where we might even get rid of Sorcerer 8. But for now, if you hit it, you should feel good. So it's going to get 15% AP.
Get
Again,
rid of it?
I'm not saying this is going to make it playable, but trying to help it a little bit.
That's crazy.
Okay. On
they would rather delete 8 sorcerers than make it a playable vertical. But I guess what they get to do is put more power into it, so they can put they can make 4 and 6 sorcerers stronger.
We've seen the rise of the Renata Singed comp, and we like that comp. We don't want it to be unplayable.
I don't.
We know when it reaches its cap, though, it's very frustrating.
Shields.
You've got 6 Sentinels to go through, Renata shielding them, and the DR that the Sentinels have gets really high.
It's not infinite.
We didn't want to nerf it too much, so we looked for a spot that kind of made sense to give it a very light touched, and what we found was Singed. Singed scaling was actually pretty insane.
Yeah.
Singed 4 had 70% DR. By comparison, like Leona 3 has 50%. So we decided to nerf Singed 3 a little bit from 60 to 55. And then that means Singed 4 goes from 70 to 60. So, Jesus, so many sirens around here. So that goes from 70 to 60. And so Singed 4 won't be quite as tanky. I'm a little sad by this because, like, Singed 4 was finally seeing play. But hopefully this still makes it fine.
This also nerfs Mad Chemist as well, by the way. Like, so they actually nerfed the hero augment by doing this because Cinch 4 is usually heavy cap. Twitch is horrible. I actually think Twitch is pretty good if you have the setup for him. But it's kind of like the same as like Enforcer and Conquer. It's like pretty rare. But that being said, I happened to play against 2 games just now that Twitch did really well.
Violet has definitely been like the easiest to play reroll comp. We still want Family to be really good. We don't want to turn our back on Family. But we do have to bring Violet down.
Oh, you don't get
if we
DR
have to
on
do more than this,
Oh,
it'll probably be the trait.
I thought you did.
If it ends up being too much, what'll have to happen is we probably have to buff things like Powder and Vander. But Violet's going to get a nerf here. And for a lot of these champions, you're going to see, by the way, we chose to go with like base AD because it's the cleanest like percent nerf to just all their power or percent buff in some cases. So you're going to see some, like, again, like Violet, we didn't want to go 10% nerf, would have been 5 AD.
Oh,
so it's a little lighter than that, with like
maybe
an
it changes
8%
its ability.
nerf, which is 4 AD. So.
Got it.
All right, Camille definitely got nerfed really hard last patch.
Yep, this makes sense.
That being said, she's still playable. Like, we saw Tidal do really well with it, and it's just a lot harder to play than it was last patch.
Artifact.
And to a level where it could use a tiny nudge up here. So again, a 4% buff to Camille base AD, which helps all her scaling. Nocturne was in a weird place where at the start of the set, everyone thought he was terrible. By the end of the patch, he was getting like decent. And then the attack speed plus automata buffs really helped him out. So now he's really, really good. We like that he's good. We don't want him to be bad. But a tiny 2 AD nerf just to bring him down. No big deal. Zeri's another one that, again, her position
all these
in the
80
trade
buffs
web
are
is just
significant.
so weird. So she's always going to be a bit of a challenge, but she's going to get a 3 AD buff. Again, that helps her spell as well. So, cool. Gangplank Melee, same thing. Not really being played here. Gets about an 8% buff.
That's a
to all
big
of his damage.
buff.
Cool.
Oh my god.
Loris continues to be kind of the weak link of Enforcer and Sentinels. Not really a ton of people playing. Not zero. I saw Setsuko get a first with it that game that he was kind of out of, which was kind of cool. So very light touch here. 10 mana. No big deal. Echo is meant to be the capstone of both Scrap and Enforcer. Not Enforcer. Rebel. Ambusher. Words are hard. Scrap and Ambusher.
He doesn't need a buff.
That being said, he's close.
Opinion.
He's really, really close. So this is not meant to be a very large buff here. You can see going from 290 to 300 is like a 3% buff. But that combined with the Camille buff should be enough to get Ambusher back on the level we want it. Should be it for there.
And Gangplank buff.
Malzahar
helps you
over nerfed by just a tiny bit here. So the tiniest of margins
give
here
him
goes from 14 to 15 base. Not a big deal here. And then Silco. Silco has now kind of become the king of the 4-cost carries. Also, with Chem Baron, he's in a really good spot. Again, very light touch here, going from 38 to 36. Not a big deal. Okay, Victor. Last thing here. Victor clearly has been the king of 6 costs, a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
We know he's going to be frustrating, and that's not going to change all set, because the core part of his kit that we will never change, calling it now, we will never change this, is that when he casts, he stuns the enemy team for 2 seconds. That's not going to change. We need to balance around that. Now, for a B patch, though, our options were limited. For example, I want to remove the Shred and Sunder. I
Yes.
can't do the localization in a B patch. So it might be a while before we can do it right. So for now, we did what we could, but I do think he will need more than this. He might still be too strong because we didn't nerf the right things. I'm acknowledging that, but it's a limitation of the B patch. So what we did, we lowered his starting energy by 1, so it'll take him a little longer to cast.
It does matter.
He gets less damage for his laser at 1 star. 2 star we still want to be satisfying, so 2 star actually got a teeny tiny nudge up, but it's also going to be harder to hit 2 star with all the 6 cost changes. And then we also lowered the 1 cost 1 star spell by like close to 20%. It's like 15%
yeah, it's a pretty big nerf.
So you're going to get a lot less free damage from throwing in a Victor. Again, utility on this guy will still be insane because you still have a 2-second wide board stun. You still have the Shred and Sunder. We know we need to do more work. This is what we could do for now. So, yeah. Last few things. We went for a couple quick wins.
The interesting thing about that is that Mort said that like Victor just has to change, and it sounds like, Victor will always keep his board stun no matter what. And it's always going to be 2 seconds. So yeah, I guess that's something that's even out of his hands. It sounds like it's like a call being made, and he has to just like plan around that. I do agree with though. I actually think that his utility for his Shred and Thunder is too high as well. Like I told Mort to reduce it from 30 to 20, and he said he's just gonna cut it. He wants to cut it entirely. So that'll be happening. But if you guys don't want to play because you're thinking Victor Stunt is just like too obnoxious, even still after the B patch, the next patch I believe is like January, second week of January or something like that. I think it's like somewhere around here. Like it might be January 8th or like the 15th. So yeah, I mean, honestly, it might be Good Guy Ride just telling you to spend some time with the holidays and focus on your New Year's resolutions.
And augments, there's a lot more work to do in the augment space. It's not like anything's like way far off, but some of the things that need a little more work that we couldn't do in a B patch. Built different though, very underperforming.
Yeah, this augment sucks.
Right now in the data, it looks pretty bad. So it's getting a pretty sizable buff here. The HP going from 240 to 530 to 300 to 600, and the attack speed going from 45 to 60 to 45 to 75. That base HP should make a pretty big difference. Should make it a little bit more playable. And if it needs more, we can do more now in the next patch. This will give us time to figure that out.
It definitely does. It helps.
And then Exalted Adventure, we like this one, but it's doing a little too good, so we lowered the rewards by about 15%, usually in the form of like minus gold or minus a support item plus gold. So the average value, I believe, goes from like 90 to 75, give or take. Those are approximations, but yeah. And then on the bug fix side, Victor and Zeri can no longer gain extra resources from 8 Visionary. Removing a Visionary emblem from Victor no longer caused him to lose his starting Chaos energy. Those were just kind of in the same nature, so we could fix those.
Visionary affecting
and 2 committed.
Energy.
Hard commit will no longer give emblems that don't have units of all costs needed.
All right.
So there you go. Like I said, nothing crazy. We wanted to keep it pretty simple. The biggest things were the Violet and the Victor changes. A lot of minor changes, less than 5% usually in most cases. And then the system stuff, getting the shop odds back, lowering the 6 cost odds, stuff like that. So there you go. Hope you enjoy. I know I'm looking forward to finally finishing my grind during the Christmas break. I basically got to Diamond and then haven't had time to play since. So it should be fun.
Not bad. Good luck, Mort.
Otherwise, I'm going to relax here, fly home tomorrow, and hopefully get to a nice winter break. So, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Morton team. They did remember this was a Plan B patch. Overall, like it looks like it's the right things. Like if you look at generally like what's going on with the tier list, they like pretty much hit everything except for Rebels. But I think Rebels is in like a fine-ish spot. It's definitely really good. Nocturne is still going to be really crazy with artifacts. And then like some of the weaker stuff, like
man, I'm getting more dogged again.
Like, fine. It's like totally fine. And remember that like some things get better because other things get worse. Like we don't know exactly like what family and all these rerolls are pressuring out of the meta. So I think it's generally a thumbs up from me. I don't know if I would like add anything else differently.
Man, I'm getting more dogged again.
Like maybe they did even add some love for sorcerers, so it's not even like they neglected some of the weaker performing stuff.